And welcome back to another installment of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I'm your host, Sean Meyers, flying solo this week as co-host Justin Lowry, unable to join us, but in Justin's absence, there's still going to be plenty of discussion about what WWE programming presented over the past week, as well as what's to come this weekend. It's one of the bigger weekends of the WWE calendar with Royal Rumble. But before we get into what we saw on television this past week, what's upcoming in the next few days, I think probably the biggest story that came out, circulated probably about within the past 24 hours, rumors really running rampant that Ronda Rousey's WWE run could be ending in a matter of a couple months. Indications are that WrestleMania will be the end of Ronda Rousey's run, at least for the time being. And I've seen sort of conflicting reports. Some saying that that will be it for her, and I've heard speculation even inside the company, people believing that might be true. Other indications that she will take a break, maybe to start a family, but with the intention of always coming back, resuming her career, as it was reported initially, and I believe WWE even put it out there that it was a multi-year contract that she agreed upon when she started just about almost exactly a year ago. She made her debut at the 2018 Royal Rumble, coming out at the end after Asuka won. It led to her first match at WrestleMania. Since then, she's won the Raw Women's Championship at SummerSlam, defended it at Evolution, will be defending it again this Sunday, and by all accounts will be either in one of the main events or the main event at WrestleMania, depending on exactly how they set it up. Could be some combination of her, Becky Lynch, and potentially Charlotte. But if this does indeed prove accurate and Ronda Rousey is at least stepping away for the time being after WrestleMania, it really changes, I think, the way that the company's going to book this match at WrestleMania and potentially book the Royal Rumble as well. So it really creates some drama that maybe wasn't there previously. And, Ronda Rousey is a very interesting case because I think if you were to rewind about 2 to 3 years ago and ask someone if you could see one person come into the world of professional wrestling who's in MMA or, in Hollywood, whatever, who would you want to see step in a WWE ring? I think Ronda Rousey would probably be the top answer, if not the top, one of the top answers. And it's really, I think, just a match made in heaven for WWE to get Ronda Rousey, such an attraction with her MMA background, with, again, her work in Hollywood. She's well known all across the entire world, especially here in North America. But as good as she's been in her less than a year, doesn't seem like it's created that much of a significant impact in terms of ratings, which is a little surprising. And maybe the ratings would be even worse if not for Ronda. I mean, that's realistic, but she hasn't moved the needle, I don't think, as much as what I anticipated and what probably some other people expected. But she's, I think, for all intents and purposes, lived up to the billing in terms of her in-ring performances. She's had some great matches on the mic. We've seen flashes. We've also seen her really struggle, including recently. The last couple of weeks, I thought she's not been very good in that role. So we'll see what happens. But this is kind of unique timing that it's coming out right before the Royal Rumble. Maybe give some unpredictability to her title match against Sasha Banks, as well as who might be winning the Rumble, because if Ronda's done at WrestleMania, then she's not going to be retaining the title at WrestleMania, it would seem. I mean, theoretically she could, and then they could have a tournament if she sort of forfeits and says, I need to step aside. But very likely we will see her losing her title between now and the end of WrestleMania 35. So we'll have to wait and see, but certainly big news that came out this week in that regard. I wanted to touch on some of the things that we saw on Monday night on Raw, and kind of a scrambling type situation for the Universal title match because it changed so late in the process. For weeks and almost a few months now, it was Brock Lesnar against Braun Strowman. We knew the stipulation for Strowman and Corbin going back to last month's pay-per-view was if Strowman won, he would get Lesnar at the Rumble for a title. They decided to change paths for whatever reason. Justin Lowry speculated to that last week. It seems as though Braun is physically okay at this point, but maybe they realized we don't want to do Braun and Brock again. We don't want to have Strowman lose once again. We've already seen that a number of times. Let's try something fresh. So they went last week with Finn Balor. Now they had to try to sort of ratchet up the interest in this storyline. So they have Brock Lesnar come out. Braun Strowman responds during the promo. Finn Balor also comes out. It leads to a match between Strowman and Finn in which they're showing that Finn can battle with these heavyweights. Well, it ends with Brock Lesnar attacking everybody, taking out Finn Balor, F5, as you see. They made Finn look pretty good in this. They made him, if you didn't believe before that he could go toe-to-toe with some of the bigger competitors, they showed like, oh, well, here's him against Braun Strowman, who's even bigger than Brock Lesnar. Finn Balor is a legitimate threat. It was decent. I understand why they have to do stuff like this. My issue is, why not be doing this with Finn Balor the prior 6 months or his entire career instead of just trying to show over the past couple weeks how good he is and make fans believe? Because let's be honest, I don't think many people expect Finn Balor to win the championship on Sunday. I don't, and we'll get into the predictions later. But you don't ever want to have a major pay-per-view match where the vast majority of your fan base and your audience does not believe that the challenger has any chance. I mean, that's just a recipe for fans not caring. I think they did their best to try to make Finn seem significant over the past couple weeks. My concern is it's too little, too late. And then you really only have this past Monday as far as the interaction between Finn and Brock Lesnar. So there's not really a built-in storyline there. I thought they could have done a little bit better had they made this decision, weeks ago, and they could have spent more time building up to this specific match. But nonetheless, I still think it's probably an improvement to have Finn and Brock as opposed to Brock Lesnar once again against Braun Strowman. Something else that I thought stood out on Raw in a negative way was it seems like since we've started this show back in March, going on, 10 months now, that we've constantly said, whether it's myself, Sean Saputo, Justin Lowry, whomever, they need to find something for Elias. Elias is getting a great reaction. He got a great reaction as a heel. He's getting a great reaction as a face. He's selling a ton of merchandise. He's doing everything you need on the mic, in promos. His matches are solid, I would say. He's not a great in-ring performer, but he's done enough to this point where I think you can certainly argue that he deserves a push. He deserves a real storyline. We've not gotten that to this point, and it doesn't seem like we're going to get it anytime soon because he lost to Baron Corbin once again. He's lost to Corbin twice now in the past few weeks on Monday Night Raw. Corbin's a guy that he got his push. He was, running Raw. He was in storylines constantly. He was in main events. He got to have a match against Braun Strowman, even though that sort of turned out to be a joke. But he has been in significant storylines recently. Elias has not. The whole story behind Corbin is he's disgraced. It's his fall from the top of the mountain. No longer running Raw. You can continue to pile on by having him lose matches and in the process get Elias a little bit of a push. But they decide to go the opposite direction. It really makes almost no sense to me why this has been happening with Elias. This guy needs a real feud. It's to the point now we are, really it's kicking off the road to WrestleMania when you get to the Royal Rumble. He needs to do something of note at WrestleMania. Not saying he needs to be in a world title match. Maybe maybe an Intercontinental title match, although if Lashley continues to be champion, we don't want to see that again. We've already seen Elias and Lashley twice now. But he needs something of significance. Having him lose basically cleanly to Baron Corbin twice is just mind-blowing to me. And certainly at this point, fans are going to stop having this high level of interest in Elias if he never does anything meaningful in storylines. And that's how you sort of kill a guy's momentum. We've seen it before. I think it's actually happened to Braun Strowman over the past year. This company, when they have someone who's red hot, they need to accentuate that. They need to push them. They need to put them in prominent stories. And not saying that Elias needs to win every match, but give him something significant, because when was the last real significant feud that he had? He had a month program with Seth Rollins over the Intercontinental title back in the summer. I think they wrestled in June. Since then, he's kind of been back and forth. He's done some stuff with Bobby Roode. He's done Bobby Lashley. So he's got the Bobbies in the rearview mirror. Now he's working with Corbin again. It's start and stop. They don't ever really seem to have anything concrete. That needs to change. I think one way you can change that is have a really nice showing for Elias at the Royal Rumble and then build off of that immediately. The very next night, have him do something significant. We'll have to wait and see. Something else that was noteworthy on Monday Night Raw was an announcement that came courtesy of Alexa Bliss as she was hosting her Moment of Bliss, and they did sort of a variation of what they always do leading up to the Royal Rumble, where they have all the competitors come out and fight. Normally it's the men throwing each other over the top rope in the ring to close out a show. This time they have all the women come out and try to interrupt Alexa Bliss's talk segment. That's not real significant. I mean, that's, it is what it is. That's how they just feel the need to promote the Royal Rumble, as you see all the ladies there from Raw, pretty much all of them who will be in the Royal Rumble. The big announcement came after that brawl sort of cleared out. Alexa Bliss said, I am entering the Royal Rumble. And, if you haven't been following for a couple months, okay, what's the big deal? Of course, Alexa Bliss is in the Royal Rumble. They don't even have a big enough roster to fill out all 30 spots. They need everyone in there. Alexa had not been wrestling for quite some time. It's been probably about 3 months since she's been able to step in the ring. She's been injured. There were varying reports that it was, pretty significant, career-threatening injury, and then she was making progress, and then that progress seemingly halted. You never know what to believe when you get reports like that, but it's great news that she has been cleared to compete in the Royal Rumble. So I would assume, based on that, she's 100% full go from here on out. Maybe they'll ease her schedule a little bit, wane her back in. But her being able to compete at Royal Rumble, you figure she's going to be involved at WrestleMania as well in some in-ring or physical capacity, as opposed to just hosting a talk show. And that'll be good. Raw needs her. She's great as a talker. She's great as a character. But you want to have it all capped off with her, at least at times, doing it in the ring. And I think she's very solid in the ring. I would say she's slightly above average for the company. So, she could get it done. So good to see Little Miss Bliss returning to the ring. On SmackDown, I thought it was a very good show, but much like recent weeks, it was more about the in-ring competition. However, there was sort of an interesting twist to finish SmackDown, as they did a 2 out of 3 falls match, Andrade Cien Almas and Rey Mysterio. Terrific again. But it ended prematurely. Samoa Joe came out, and then he's doing the, I'm going to win the Royal Rumble, I'll take out everyone, so on and so forth. So Joe's standing in the ring. Okay, no big deal. We sort of expected something like that maybe. Bit of a surprise to finish off the show, however, as Randy Orton came out, RKO Joe, which, if you really think about it, I know Orton at times has really played sort of a tweener character. Not a heel, not a face, but in this role, it sort of came across as him being like a face. That said, he's been such a heel in recent months that I'm still going to buy him as a heel at this point. But attacking Samoa Joe makes it a little sort of murkier. But regardless of heel or face, Randy Orton seemingly is back. And, this is a guy that he's not on TV each and every week. They kind of have some stints where they just take him off, whether he's banged up, he's resting, he has other commitments. So Randy Orton's back. He's in the Royal Rumble, and now people are saying that he might be a legitimate contender. Because we all know on Raw, Seth Rollins seems to be the guy destined to win, or at least contend. Drew McIntyre as well on Raw. But we really hadn't figured out anyone on SmackDown. I talked to Justin Lowry about this last week. I said, who even stands out? Well, now it seems like that guy might be Randy Orton. So if they decide they want to swerve fans a little bit away from the Rollins victory, or they want to focus on SmackDown with the Royal Rumble winner, Randy Orton could be a legitimate option. So he's back now, and you have to wonder, Will it be Randy Orton challenging for the WWE Championship at WrestleMania? If so, maybe he is the guy that wins the Royal Rumble. So all of a sudden, you at least have some other option heading into Sunday's Men's Royal Rumble. I mentioned that interrupted the 2 out of 3 falls match, and what a match it was. I think the week prior was probably a little bit better between Almas and Mysterio, in which Andrade won cleanly. So they decided to do it again, and some people, understandably, are saying, I'm a little disappointed that this match is taking place on SmackDown. This could be, a pay-per-view match. This could be a WrestleMania match between these two. And I agree with that. That being said, Justin made a good point. Maybe more eyes are on it on SmackDown than at a pay-per-view. And quite frankly, you want to deliver good TV each and every week. If this is how they have to do it, that's fine. Just as long as it doesn't cost Andrade in the long run. I want Andrade getting these big pay-per-view matches sooner rather than later. Maybe they will go that route. Maybe he will do something of note at WrestleMania. Probably will have a good showing at the Royal Rumble as well. But they go with this match on TV, and, it shows how good both these guys are in the ring. And Vince McMahon or whoever can say, I need a total package, someone who can talk, someone with size, whatever. But with the matches that these guys have had, the buzz it's created, I don't see how you can't elevate both these guys. We all know Mysterio, he's a Hall of Famer. No doubt about that. He's won championships, world championships in the past. But Andrade, man, it seems like he should be next in line for one of those guys getting a massive push, getting an opportunity to show how good he is. Not just against Rey Mysterio on SmackDown, but as I said before, at pay-per-views, in big storylines, contending for championships. I think this is a guy way more than Rusev or Nakamura would benefit from a United States title run and just go out there each and every week and just kill it with terrific matches. So that was another bright spot, and I just hope and pray that the powers to be buy into Andrade and they recognize how great this feud has been with the in-ring work and say this is a guy we need to really elevate because the fans are loving it. There's no doubt the buzz that these matches has created has been very significant. One other thing that stood out to me on SmackDown, if you did not have a chance to see it, there was a video package with Samoa Joe, but really Mustafa Ali kind of narrating and giving his take on the feud with Samoa Joe. And he posted it on his Twitter. It aired on SmackDown, and it was really terrific. It just had a different feel to it. It was, one of those pre-recorded, it's kind of like a vignette, I guess. A lot of times you see when superstars are going to debut, they do something like this, filmed on location somewhere. The production quality was terrific. The promo itself by Mustafa Ali was outstanding. This guy has really taken his game to the next level, and I think he just needed the opportunity. He got it. He's running with it. People, I think, are starting to rally behind him, and something like this on Tuesday, this promo, now all of a sudden fans relate to Mustafa Ali. Maybe they didn't know who he was. Maybe, when he came to SmackDown, they had no idea about him, what he stood for, what type of person he was. Now, each and every week, seeing him deliver some exciting matches, but more specifically and more importantly, seeing what makes up Mustafa Ali, the character, the man, I think that's going to allow fans to relate to him, to empathize with him, to rally behind him. And again, I cannot stress enough, go back and watch this promo. I thought it was terrific. Ali really taking his game to the next level. Now, he did lose his match against Samoa Joe later in the night. Okay, that's fine. Samoa Joe's no doubt a main event guy. And, I can't argue too much with that, just as long as it leads to bigger and better things to come for Mustafa Ali as well. Samoa Joe, maybe he'll be challenging for a championship at WrestleMania. Maybe he'll be winning the Royal Rumble. No, I don't think he will, but, it could happen. Regardless of what happens with Joe, though, if that feud is over between those two, Mustafa Ali needs to get something significant off of it. And, I'm saying this, same thing about Andrade. Maybe you throw those two in a feud. Now, my only concern there is, you probably can't have both guys ultimately succeed as a result of that feud? Maybe you could. It's kind of tough to pull off, but those are two young guys that are opening eyes on SmackDown each and every week. I've focused on them a lot, and I've done so again this past week, but I thought they really were standouts from the show, and that's a good thing because a company that needs to develop new stars has seemingly two in the making right there on SmackDown. Without Justin, it's going to be a little bit more difficult to go over the Royal Rumble predictions. Now, he did submit his predictions to me, so I will touch on what he has predicted, although I can't really give the reasoning behind it. But I will break down some of the bigger matches, give my thoughts on what might happen on Sunday. And again, we'll revisit these next week. We'll have the graphic up there at the end and then go back and see who did better between Justin and myself. But let's start with the men's Royal Rumble match. It's the Royal Rumble. To me, that's always the biggest takeaway, more so than championship matches. Who will be headlining WrestleMania, challenging for a title? I think it's Seth Rollins. And I think that's the right choice. But it's almost, at this point, feels like it's going to be anticlimactic if it is Seth Rollins, because he's really been the only guy. You can mix in Drew McIntyre a little bit. Those two have been really promoted as the key competitors in this Royal Rumble. And then you wait until the very last SmackDown before the Rumble to throw Randy Orton maybe in contention. But I look at those three guys as probably the only realistic possibilities. I thought Drew McIntyre maybe if Braun Strowman had won the title. Now that he's out, I don't see Drew McIntyre possibly contending for the championship of WrestleMania against either Brock Lesnar or Finn Balor. I just don't think there's enough interest behind Finn and McIntyre for Vince and company to say that's our Universal title main event. I see it Brock Lesnar defending the championship against Seth Rollins. Finally, Seth gets over the hump, beats Lesnar, and I hope and pray that'll be the end of Brock Lesnar's second awful run as champion. But I think the safe pick is Seth Rollins. I'm going with Seth Rollins because that's really the only person his company's given any indication that it will be. So I go Seth Rollins, and Justin agrees. Is there a possibility something swervy? Absolutely. But you want to play the percentages and try to get these right, not come up with outlandish predictions that have a very small chance. Now, if that outlandish prediction comes true, you look awfully smart. I'm going to go the safe route, picking Seth Rollins. That leads into the women's Royal Rumble. This is the second ever. Last year was Asuka, and I don't think that was a surprise because she was still undefeated at that point. They needed to keep her strong, and it seemed like just a matter of time until she wrestled for the championship at WrestleMania, which she did. Of course, she lost from there. This year, it feels almost as obvious. That being said, I really hope and pray that this company does not go with the obvious pick for both the men's and women's Royal Rumbles. Charlotte is the no-brainer here. No one can really argue that anyone else that's currently entered in the Royal Rumble has a realistic chance, because they don't. I mean, the only possible scenario I can think of is Bayley on Raw, in which they do a Sasha Bayley storyline for the title, but that would require Sasha Banks beating Ronda Rousey, winning the championship from her. I don't see that happening. We'll get into that later. So with Bayley not seemingly being a real smart option, Charlotte is the only pick of the women currently entered. That's what I'm going with. That's what Justin Lowry went with. However, I could see a possibility of either Ronda Rousey or, more specifically, Becky Lynch finding their way into the Royal Rumble. If either of those women are in there, they absolutely could win. And quite frankly, I think if either of them are in there, I probably would pick them to win. So I think Becky Lynch has a chance to win the Royal Rumble, but because we don't even know if she's going to be in there, maybe she wins the title earlier in the night, I have to go with Charlotte Flair. That's my pick. She's going to be in one of the main events at WrestleMania. So going with Charlotte, as is Justin. Let's move on to the World Championship matches. First one will focus on AJ and Daniel Bryan. I think that it's a really exciting matchup because of how good these guys are in the ring. But I mentioned before, I thought Mustafa Ali would have been a nice pick to go against Daniel Bryan. We've already seen this match happen a handful of times. Bryan winning the title from AJ on SmackDown right before Survivor Series. And then, of course, they had the match last month at TLC. It was a heck of a match. Daniel Bryan sort of escaped with a victory. just a little bit craftier than AJ. This one's kind of tough to call because I look at the storyline a few weeks ago with Vince McMahon getting hit by AJ Styles, and I think they're going to do something massive with AJ going up until and including WrestleMania. I thought AJ actually might be the guy to win the Royal Rumble. When I found out he wasn't in it, he was challenging Daniel Bryan. I said, well, Daniel Bryan's not going to lose the title right back to him. The more I thought about it, however, I really, at this point, I don't have a great logical explanation, but I think AJ Styles wins the title. And I just think AJ winning opens up to more challengers at WrestleMania, quite frankly. So when you think about what's the SmackDown main event at WrestleMania for the WWE Championship, it's Daniel Bryan against who? Doesn't seem like there's a real obvious face to challenge him if he's already doing this program with AJ Styles now. If you give it to AJ Styles, who could you have challenge? Randy Orton. So unless they want to really, as I mentioned before, switch things up, turn Randy Orton face, and have him go against Daniel Bryan, you could do that. But I think AJ Styles, AJ Styles, Randy Orton is a little bit more appealing to me at least, and it's a little easier to figure out because you have the heel in Randy Orton, you have the face in AJ Styles, and there you go. That being said, I don't want to see Daniel Bryan lose the title yet. I mean, I would be happy with him retaining and continuing into WrestleMania, but as of right now, I just don't see a clear contender on the face side to go against Daniel Bryan. It doesn't look like what Justin Lowry alluded to is going to happen with The Miz. Seems like he and Shane McMahon might ultimately square off at WrestleMania, so I just don't see anyone on the face side to challenge Daniel Bryan. That's why I'm thinking they go AJ Styles. However, my cohort Justin Lowry disagrees. He is going with Daniel Bryan to retain the title at the Royal Rumble. The other title match is Brock Lesnar and Finn Balor. We mentioned this one before, how it's sort of been a late build to this because Finn just entered the match, less than 2 weeks ago at this point. It has to be Brock Lesnar, I think. As much as I want it to be Finn Balor, as much as I want to see the title off of Brock. And yeah, you could have an intriguing storyline at WrestleMania if it is Finn and it is Seth Rollins, because we all know they wrestled for the first ever Universal Championship, and Finn won. He was injured by Rollins, never got his title shot back. They never really finished that storyline. But they're both faces now. And, it's a little bit tougher to do something like that. And I just don't think that Vince McMahon and the company truly believes Finn Balor is a world champion, let alone a world champion who will be defending the title at WrestleMania on Raw. Don't see it happening. I think it could happen. I think it probably should happen, but it won't happen. Brock Lesnar is going to retain. He will go into WrestleMania as a champion, and then, hopefully, as I said before, that'll be the end of his reign. But I don't see it ending before then. I think Brock retains the title. I hope that Finn Balor has a good showing and that he can build upon that into something big himself for WrestleMania. But as of now, the Universal Championship stays with Brock Lesnar. Justin Lowry agrees with that assessment. Really, I think that's a pretty obvious one. Another one that should be obvious, Ronda Rousey, Sasha Banks. Justin and I are both going with Ronda Rousey because you don't have her lose for the first time against Sasha Banks at the Royal Rumble. You don't have her lose the title and then really kind of reduce the significance of a WrestleMania match, because undefeated Ronda with the championship at WrestleMania, now you're tuning in to see, can someone finally end the streak? What's going to happen here, especially with the rumors of her potentially leaving the company? You don't give that away early. If she loses to Sasha now, she kind of loses a little bit of her appeal, right? She's not undefeated. We saw what happened with Asuka after her streak ended. So it's obvious to pick Ronda Rousey here. Sasha's sort of just thrown into it. I did mention I could see a scenario, however, and it's sort of far-fetched, sort of fantasy booking, where Sasha does somehow win the title. And she would do it, not cleanly, of course. You don't do that to Ronda Rousey. You have either Becky or Charlotte or both intervene. They get back at Ronda for her costing them last month in their match against Asuka TLC. Ronda loses the title. She suffers her first loss. If the company's okay doing that, then you have Sasha as the champion on Raw. You have Ronda find her way to SmackDown. All of a sudden, you have Ronda, Becky, Charlotte on the same show leading up to WrestleMania. You get the match there. Makes a lot more sense, and it's a lot easier than trying to have, the cross-brand type of promotion coming out of the Royal Rumble leading up to WrestleMania. But I don't think it's going to happen. It's far-fetched. I'm not willing to put my neck on the line with that prediction. So Justin and I both go Ronda Rousey. For the SmackDown Women's Championship, it's a little bit harder to call, I think. Becky Lynch is, what many people expected to be the favorite in the Royal Rumble. She's not in it, for now at least. She's challenging Asuka. Asuka, of course, just won the title last month. You don't take it off of her already, do you? I believe you do. And I'm not saying necessarily that it's the right decision, but I think it's the easiest decision. You want Becky Lynch in the main event women's title match at WrestleMania. Seemingly you want Charlotte in there. You definitely want Ronda Rousey. How do you get Ronda and Becky and maybe Charlotte in it? Well, there's a couple ways, but I think Becky having the championship is one of the easiest ways. If she loses to Asuka, she would then have to win the Royal Rumble. I don't know that she's going to be in the Royal Rumble, but even if she does win it, that sort of leaves Charlotte out. So I'm saying Becky Lynch wins the SmackDown Championship back. She has that already built in, and then it makes it a little bit easier potentially to set up this storyline heading into WrestleMania. Justin Lowry, however, disagrees. He's going with Asuka. He thinks that the Empress of Tomorrow retains the title, although he and I both think Becky Lynch gets into this main event at WrestleMania. He just has a different path for her doing that. Last few matches, not a lot of hype behind these other ones. The Shane McMahon and Miz against the Bar, I think, has been interesting. They've sort of made it a bit of a comedy storyline with the Miz and Shane's interaction, but it's been pretty good. I don't think there's any doubt in the end that Shane and The Miz are going to go against one another at some point. Will it happen starting this Sunday? I think so. I think they lose. There's a little bit of dissension, and then probably you wait about 3 to 4 weeks before you split them up against one another. But I don't see them winning the championship because I just think it would be too quick of a turnaround to have them drop it and then have them go against each other by WrestleMania time. I think it's easier. Have them lose, come up just short. Maybe some seeds are planted amongst them for dissension, and then ultimately The Miz turns on Shane McMahon. So I'm going with the Bar to retain the SmackDown title. Justin Lowry making the same pick. The two pre-show matches, Rusev Nakamura for the U.S. Championship, Rusev defending. I don't care. I mean, Rusev he gets a good reaction, but he hasn't been interesting to me. The sort of new Rusev, handsome Rusev character, it's just not working. I like the one that was with Aiden English as a heel a lot better. And Nakamura is just almost hard to believe how insignificant, boring, and irrelevant he's become. But that's exactly the case for Nakamura. I'm going with Rusev, Justin going with Rusev as well, just because he won it recently. We don't think it's time for that to change back to Nakamura. Really, Nakamura didn't do anything with the title anyway. Why give it back to him a second time? Lastly, also on the kickoff show, the 4-way cruiserweight. We both believe Buddy Murphy retains the title. Kalisto's in there. Akira Tozawa is in there. Ultimately, I think it just makes the most sense to keep it with Buddy Murphy. That being said, truthfully, the way that it's presented on pay-per-views, it doesn't really matter. They haven't made the Cruiserweight Championship seem significant on pay-per-views. Now on 205 Live, it certainly does feel significant. There's no doubt about that. But this Fatal 4-Way, I think Buddy Murphy keeps it, and then you really try to build up to finally someone trying to unseat him at WrestleMania for that championship. And maybe have it be a newcomer to 205 Live. Maybe, let's say, Ricochet, someone like that. But I don't think it's time for him to drop the title just yet. So let's take a look at the predictions. Again, Justin and I think we're pretty similar. You see the differences. We disagree on the Asuka versus Becky Lynch match, as well as the Daniel Bryan versus AJ Styles. And quite frankly, I was going to pick Daniel Bryan, and I sort of reconsidered that one. So I think Justin, really could, be onto something there. And the Asuka and Becky Lynch, it's all about how this company wants to create the women's main event at WrestleMania. If they want Becky to be a champion, if they want Ronda to be a champion, or if they want both of them to be a champion. And yes, they could technically do that if they really wanted to. Again, this company could sort of make up its own rules. So those will be the two matches to watch as far as where Justin and I have differing opinions. Everything else we believe: Rollins obvious pick, Charlotte obvious pick, Lesnar obvious pick, Ronda Rousey obvious pick, and then we agree the bar, Rusev and Murphy as well. So we will revisit those predictions next week. Check out how we did. I think so far this year, or at least since we've started doing this podcast back to 2018, I have a slight edge on Justin Lowry, but it is just a slight one. We'll see if I can continue that, or if maybe Justin makes up a little bit of ground. Nonetheless, Royal Rumble, always exciting. One of my favorite pay-per-views, probably my favorite pay-per-view of every year because of the unpredictability. We'll see if there's any surprises. I think there will be some, maybe not massive, but we shall see. It's always exciting when that clock starts ticking down from 10, who's going to come out next. So I'm excited for the Royal Rumble. Hope the show lives up. It has a pretty good card. Seems like some obvious outcomes. Hopefully the company will freshen things up and be a little bit unpredictable on Sunday. That's going to do it for this edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling. I want to remind you to check out our Twitter handle. It's 5-Star Pod Wrestle. Also go to our YouTube channel, subscribe, like the videos, and definitely go back and check out all the old ones dating back now about 10 months to March of 2018. That's going to do it for this edition. Sean Meyers signing off. We'll see you once again next week, post-Royal Rumble edition of the 5-Star Podcast of Wrestling.